This groom professed his love for someone other than his bride during their wedding ceremony. Most girls spend years dreaming about their wedding day. They think about the cake and the flowers in the venue, and most importantly, the person they're gonna spend the rest of their lives with, the person who will make all of their dreams come true. This bride was confident that she had found just that, a man who would protect and love her until they were both old and gray. Everything took a dramatic turn when this groom decided to pause in the middle of his vows and confess that he deeply and truly loved somebody else. What this groom did absolutely shocked everybody at the wedding. Keep listening to find out more about this dramatic turn of events. Who could this mystery woman be? When we think of a wedding ceremony, we typically think about two people professing their love for each other. They promise to honor each other for the rest of their lives, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health. This wedding between Jefferson and Jessica started out like any other wedding. The couple seemed happy and very much in love. Everyone was there to watch Jefferson and Jessica solidify their love with a wedding, but it almost might not have happened. On the day of their wedding, everything was going according to plan. The bride looked stunning as she made her way down the aisle. When she was finally in front of her soon-to-be husband, she couldn't help but notice a look in his eyes. They looked deep into each other's eyes and said their vows, but what Jefferson had planned would shock everyone. This wedding took a drastic turn when Jefferson decided to profess his love for someone other than his blushing bride. Both Jessica and Jefferson had been looking forward to this day for a long time. Everything had been meticulously planned. Jessica looked stunning in her sparkly white dress and Jefferson looked handsome in his tailored suit. They met, fell in love, and decided to tie the knot after realizing they were meant to be together. When the day finally came, neither of them could have expected the worst. Of course, Jefferson had something up his sleeve, but he wasn't sure how anyone was going to take it. Jefferson and Jessica are both Portuguese. Portugal is a diverse place that's full of many languages, and this couple fell in love with the Portuguese language, so their whole wedding was conducted in Portuguese. They've both confessed that ever since they met, they'd stuck to each other like glue. It was lucky for both of them to find someone who spoke Portuguese. Oftentimes, sharing a common experience like that makes couples stronger than ever, because not only does it help the couple understand each other, but their families as well. The wedding ceremony was absolutely beautiful and all the guests were looking their best. Everyone was so happy for the bride and groom, and some emotional guests even shed tears of happiness. However, nobody in the crowd knew that Jefferson was about to surprise all the wedding attendees. Historically, a turn of events spells a recipe for disaster at a wedding. This was probably the last thing on Jessica's mind as the wedding was going on, but we all know deep down that it is also the last thing she wanted. Everybody at the wedding watched as Jefferson professed his love to his bride. That's what they were expecting to see, a groom who's dedicated to beginning a new life with his new wife. So far, everything was going according to plan. The bride had walked down the aisle and she was standing in front of the man who in a few moments would be her husband. But before he could become her husband, Jefferson knew there was something he had to get off his chest. He couldn't go on without addressing something very important to him. As the ceremony went on, the bride and groom seemed so happy to be finally making things official. When it was time to exchange their vows, everyone in the room got quiet so they could listen to what Jefferson and Jessica had to say to each other. Jefferson knew that this would be one of the most important moments of his life. He looked into the eyes of his beautiful bride while his hands trembled and his voice shook. Everyone in the crowd could tell he was nervous about what was happening. Every bride wants to look beautiful on her wedding day, and Jessica was no exception. She dreamed about this day since she was just a little girl. She thought about the man that she would marry and how he would feel about her when that day finally came. We wouldn't be surprised if she had this planned out for years. It'd be safe to assume that a lot of planning and preparation went into this wedding, so anything that could make things turn sour would have been terrible. Jessica put on a gorgeous white dress. She had hair and makeup professionally done. She wore a tiara and a long veil and walked down the aisle looking like a real-life Disney princess. Her contour was on point. She chose a bold red lipstick to complement a more neutral eye look. She was ready for this moment. But what she wasn't ready for was the detour that her soon-to-be husband was about to take. He'd throw everyone for a loop with his confession, especially Jessica. Jessica wasn't the least bit suspicious of her groom. None of the guests had any clue about what was in store for them. The ceremony seemed to be sweet and normal, and the couple started exchanging vows as you would expect a bride and groom to do at a wedding. They'd probably planned their vows for months in advance, reflecting on all the things about each other that had them together in the first place. At first, it was lovely to see it all unfold. All of their closest friends and family were surrounding them. The room was full of love and light. Jessica spoke first and she promised Jefferson that she'd always be by his side, that she'd love him for the rest of his life, and that she'd honor and respect him from now until forever. Jessica was ready to spend the rest of her life with Jefferson, which is something she probably knew before he even got down on one knee. Jefferson was obviously prepared for a shocking turn of events. His best man was standing next to the couple with a video camera. Jefferson wanted to make sure that he could preserve this moment and this surprise forever. The best man started recording as soon as the couple was about to exchange their vows. He had his camera ready, so we can only assume that he was in on the surprise too. Jefferson's best man is the reason that we even know about this story. Without him, what happened at the wedding would most likely have stayed at the wedding. Slowly but surely, the crowd began to understand that the groom was hiding something. It was becoming clear that Jefferson was about to say something very important. In the middle of his speech, he stopped, took a breath, and then started to speak again. Something was weighing heavy on his mind. He understood the gravity of what he was about to do, and as he looked into Jessica's eyes, he thought about what a future with her would look like and who he would be as her new husband. For her part, Jessica was also looking dead in the eyes of a man who was about to become her husband. But as his demeanor changed throughout his vows, even she grew nervous over what was about to go down. As her guts started to react, she watched Jefferson as he slowly but consciously continued with his vows, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go terribly wrong. Jessica had certainly been thinking about her vows for a long time. She was ready to give all of herself to this man that she loved and trusted him, and all of that showed in her vows to him. She was ready to start a life with Jefferson as a man and wife. But apparently, that couldn't happen before Jefferson said what he had to say during his vows. When it was his turn to speak, everyone in attendance was listening intently. Exchanging vows is arguably the most important part of any wedding. When people prepare to get married, they spend a long time thinking about what they're going to promise to their spouse to be. Jefferson obviously spent a long time thinking about his vows. He must have been practicing his speech for months. He knew ahead of time what he wanted to say, but he also probably knew what he had to say might cause some jaws to drop. It was courageous of him to pause the ceremony to admit what he did. Up until this point, everything was going smoothly. Jessica looked so happy and everyone was crying tears of joy, and the room looked absolutely lovely. It was like a fairy tale come to life. Friends and family had come from around the world to celebrate Jessica and Jefferson's love. Jessica waited for Jefferson to finish his speech. She was listening carefully to every word that left his lips. She expected him to promise her love and loyalty and everlasting friendship, but then he said something that she totally didn't see coming. As the best man continued to film everything, the groom looked like he was getting nervous again. He stopped speaking and then told everyone that he had something important to say. He confessed that there was someone else in the room he truly loved. The guests were astounded. They were confused about who this other woman could be. They all looked around the room to see if they could spot this mystery lady. Jessica also looked confused. She stared quizzically at her soon-to-be husband. Ever since the day these two met, they were completely inseparable. Jessica was confident that Jefferson was the one for her. She was confident that they would be together forever. In the back of her mind, she thought that maybe there was a chance that everything she believed was a lie, that all of the times he told her he loved her, he really had feelings for another woman. She stood at the altar ready to be humiliated by the man she just vowed her life to. The groom started talking about this other woman, this person he loved who wasn't Jessica. He paused and looked away from the bride. He was scanning the room looking for the person he was talking about. Everyone in the room went silent. They also looked around the room for the person Jefferson could be talking about, an ex-girlfriend, a woman from his past, or the one that got away. What happened next brought everybody to tears. Jessica must have been really nervous at this point. The man she loves just told everybody she cares about that he's in love with someone else. He even went as far as to claim as this person would be able to make all his dreams come true. He was ready to be there for her for the rest of his life, and he was ready to commit to her wholeheartedly. This was a person that he absolutely loved with all his being. What was going on, and why was he saying all of this? It was starting to get clearer and clearer that this was not a prank. Jefferson was talking about someone who was actually in the room at that very moment. The groom was speaking at length about this person who obviously was very close to his heart. The bride was stunned. She and every other person in the crowd just stared at Jefferson in awe and disbelief. They were wondering why he would wait until his wedding day to reveal his heavy secret. At this point, Jessica was starting to get worried. This was the last thing she expected from the man that she loved. Wouldn't you feel terrified if on your wedding day the man who you love told everyone that he has strong feelings for somebody else? Jessica's mind started racing. She knew there was something else going on here. Jefferson was a good man and she knew that he loved her. He wouldn't embarrass her like this on purpose. He told her that he would never hurt her and she believed him. The wedding guests were on the edge of their seats at this point, probably confused about what was going down. Half of them were probably incensed that Jefferson would throw a wrench into his own wedding, but they still had to hear what he had to say. As Jefferson began his aside, he said, "Everyone is here for a reason." As for what that reason was, the wedding guests were sure to find out. Jefferson's going off the script really had all the wedding guests' attention at this point. They listened attentively as he continued with what he was about to say. Jessica stood at the altar in disbelief as she listened to what he said. Jefferson continued, "But there is one person here that makes this day possible, and my next words are for her." Everyone was wondering who she could be, but in fact, she was right in front of their faces. After Jefferson told everyone about his love for another girl, he turned around and faced Jessica's daughter, Giovanna. By this point, almost everyone in the room knew who Jefferson was talking about. They understood that Jefferson's feelings for Jessica were strong and real, and that he was also ready to be a present and loving stepfather. Giovanna looked so happy when Jefferson finally addressed her. Giovanna was about to play a vital role in his wedding ceremony, and Jefferson was going to make a vow to her as well. No one could have expected Jefferson to make a vow to his new daughter. It wasn't like it was a mandatory for him, but the fact that he took time out of his new wife's dream wedding to address her daughter shows how much he cared. Jefferson looked into Giovanna's eyes and said, "I know I'm annoying sometimes. I get mad at you, I annoy you to brush your teeth and your hair. Sometimes I think I'm much more childish than you." After listing all the ways that they possibly couldn't get along, Jefferson assured Giovanna not to worry. After all, parents, whether biological or not, can be annoying at times. Jefferson said that even though things can get pretty childish at times, "I also give you love, kindness, and always want to protect you. I can't really explain my feelings to you." Of course, becoming a parent to a child who's not technically theirs can be pretty trying, but Jefferson is one man who is happy to step up to the plate. Being a step-parent comes with a lot of pluses and drawbacks, especially if the step-parent doesn't get along with their new stepchildren. Thankfully, this wasn't the case for Jefferson and Giovanna. The two had grown close, and Giovanna now had a place in his heart. It was something Jefferson couldn't quite put into words himself, but he said, "I can't really explain my feelings for you. I can't explain the love I feel for you because I think that love doesn't have an explanation." Giovanna's just 8 years old. She's Jessica's daughter from a previous marriage. Giovanna and Jefferson became quite close while Jefferson was pursuing a relationship with Jessica. Jefferson grew to love and care for Jessica's daughter, and he knew that marrying Jessica meant taking on an important role in Giovanna's life. He didn't want to profess his love for Jessica without also professing his love for Giovanna. Some people on the guest list didn't know that Jessica had a beautiful daughter, so they were quite surprised when Jefferson turned around. After the wedding, Jefferson would officially become Giovanna's stepfather. This was the perfect time for his dad-to-be to express just how much he appreciated Giovanna's presence in his life. Jefferson knelt down in front of Giovanna and he told her all the ways that she annoyed him, like when she ate his food and bothered him when he was trying to sleep. He also told her about all the promises he intended to keep as her new stepfather. He said, "If I could ask God anything, it would be to have you as my daughter. I would be the proudest father in the world to have such a beautiful, intelligent, and educated daughter like you." Giovanna hugged Jefferson and they both cried, Jessica cried, everybody in the crowd cried. And now we're crying because of how adorable Jefferson and Giovanna are together. Jefferson told Giovanna that he feels like she is his own child. The love he feels for her is true and pure, and he made a promise to love, protect, and help her always. If only every new stepfather could be as caring and thoughtful. He really went out of his way to make his wedding day special for Giovanna and for Jessica. As everyone in the room was in tears over Jefferson's declaration of love for his new daughter, some may have been interested in hearing what she had to say in return. After all, what if Giovanna didn't like the fact that she was getting a stepfather? Of course, that certainly wasn't the case, because to see her reaction throughout the speech only caused more happy tears. Giovanna was about to get a steady father figure in her life, and for some young girls, that's everything. Even Jefferson was so emotional during this important speech. In the end, though he had to fight through tears to get there, Jefferson was able to close his speech with one more declaration of, "I love you." His voice shook as he said it, which only went to show how much he meant it. At this point as well, Giovanna and her mom Jessica were in tears as well. Not only was Jessica sure she'd chosen the right man to take care of her family, but Giovanna was sure she had an amazing new dad. The room was certain the wedding had taken a turn for the worse when Jefferson said he loved another woman, but they were relieved to find out he was professing how much he cared about Giovanna. After he told you, "I love you, my love," Giovanna felt compelled to offer a response to her new stepfather. But she, of course, was also emotional as well. With her new dad kneeling before her, Giovanna wiped away her tears as the whole room had eyes on the two of them. Of course, Giovanna volunteered the microphone and responded to her new dad. Jefferson, she wasn't as prepared. People in attendance certainly weren't expecting what Jefferson had to say, so it was okay that Giovanna's response wasn't as elaborate. Giovanna choked back her tears and told her new dad that even though he wasn't her biological dad, that he was a father of heart. She expressed how thankful she was to have Jefferson in her life. Jefferson isn't the first to realize that marrying the love of his life also meant new responsibilities as a parent. There are plenty of people who realize the same, just like this next bride who even addressed her new husband's ex. When Pennsylvanian Katie Musser began dating her husband Jeremy, he had to let her know that he had a newborn son. His ex-girlfriend had just given birth to their son Landon when he and Katie started dating. Of course, it was good that Jeremy mentioned this from the outright, because people who enter new relationships usually aren't down for extra baggage like that. But luckily for Jeremy, Katie couldn't be deterred. Though a son wasn't enough to keep Katie away, Landon's mother Casey Bender wasn't entirely convinced. After all, Casey had just given birth to Landon, so she didn't need the drama of her baby daddy's girlfriend trying to ruin things. Thankfully, that wasn't the case. In fact, Katie and Casey turned out to be good friends. Katie was ready to help Jeremy co-parent with Casey as best as she could. It was enough for Jeremy to propose to Katie. As she prepared her vows for their wedding to Jeremy, Katie couldn't help but feel like something was amiss. She had everything planned to a T, and since she and Casey had become close friends, she even gave Casey the same bracelet the bridesmaids got. After reflecting on their relationship with Jeremy and all they'd been through with the other part of his life, Katie knew what she had to do. It was something that was sure to shock everyone. By her wedding day, Katie had finally come up with a perfect vows. Before she said her vows to Jeremy, like Jefferson in the previous story, Katie had vows prepared for Landon, to whom she'd promised to be a good mother. But before even addressing Landon, Katie's first vows were for his mother, Casey. When the time came, Katie addressed Casey in front of everyone and said this: "First, I want to thank you for accepting me as your friend and allowing me to be a part of Landon's life. I promise to be an amazing mother to your son."